Tommy Robinson, a.k.a. Stephen Yaxley Lennon, formerly the head of the English Defence League, a movement that was founded to draw attention to a Pakistani Muslim grooming and rape scandal that was taking place all across the United Kingdom, that the establishment said wasn't happening. And what did the establishment do? What did the media do? What did the politicians do when Tommy and his buddies decided to start speaking out about what was going on in their communities to their young female friends, sisters, wives, girlfriends, mothers? What did they do? They didn't pay attention. They didn't investigate. They didn't go up there. They didn't send down their crack investigative journalist teams. They pointed fingers at Tommy and called him far-right, racist, extremist, xenophobe, bigot, etc., etc. All the things, by the way, that you guys get called. And I think now they have one word for it. It's deplorable, right? But, Tommy, I'm glad that you're joining us here today, live in London, because, and by the way, we didn't get on a plane because of what the president tweeted yesterday. We just so happened to be here at the same time. And you're somebody not just who knows about this issue and who's been through all this, and you even went through your own sort of reckoning with yourself and with your old movement. But you've also dealt with Britain First before. You've sat down with these people, you've interviewed these people, you've been to their rallies, their marches, you've seen the types of people they're attracting. So let's start off with this. And by the way, Tommy's got an excellent book you should get. It's called Muhammad's Quran, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. Muhammad's Quran. It's just this fantastic compendium of everything that's in the Quran that you don't get to hear about. And you want, guys, ladies and gentlemen out there, you want ammunition when you talk to your friends, to your family members, Thanksgiving, when you talk to your politicians, your legislators about this stuff, and they say you're a kook, you're crazy, you don't know what you're talking about. Give them a copy of Muhammad's Quran. Set them straight. Tommy, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Okay, first things first. Are you a bigot, ethno-nationalist, extremist, racist, xenophobe?
Of course I'm not. Those words have come like a badge of honor.
You're standing next to a brown man born into a Muslim family. Do you want to ball your fist up and punch me? Is that what they're trying to tell us?
No, this is the problem. They couldn't be further from the truth, and everyone knows that. You know where I'm from, Raheem. I'm from Luton Town. Luton is one of the most diverse and multicultural towns in Britain, in Europe. In Europe, actually. So I've grown through, I've watched the Islamic takeover of my town, but I'm also from a town full of immigrants. My mother was an immigrant to the UK, an Irish immigrant. Most of my friends are sons of immigrants, be it St. Lucian, Jamaican, Italian, Bulgarian. We're all sons of immigrants. Mm-hmm. I've watched and seen the problems. The problems don't come from different cultures coming into our country. They don't come from Sikhs coming into our country, Jews coming into our country. The one problem I've witnessed and watched through my hometown is the divisiveness and the segregation of the Islamic community. And then the problems that brings.
And you, by the way, you also drill down into, it's not, there's not one Islamic community, right? You've got Ahmadiyas who are routinely persecuted by Sunnis, by Deobandis, by Wahhabists. You've got people like my parents, Ismaili Muslims, incredibly, I mean, these are just capitalists, right? All they want to do is work hard, pay some bills, pay some taxes, in as much as anybody wants to pay taxes, and just and raise kids and have, and so you know that's, and you've pointed this out. By the way, I've watched, I think, every single interview you've done.
Oh yeah.
Right.
So the biggest problem,
and you point this out, but they cut it up, and they don't let you talk.
They cut up, and they continue like they're saying out anti-Muslim tweets, anti-Muslim. I don't talk about Muslims. I talk about Islam.
Right.
I talk about the ideology, the scripture, the book. I talk about the Prophet Muhammad. I talk about the false Prophet Muhammad. I talk about him, and I talk about. And when we look at different sects, yes, you're right. Salafists, Wahhabists, Deobandis. Deobandis are the fastest growing sect in the UK.
You just, by the way, you just committed a hate crime live on air.
Of course.
The false prophet Muhammad, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, can get you banged up here in the can get you locked up here in the United Kingdom for saying, I'm genuine. That's Islamophobia as far as the establishment's concerned.
No, you're right. You're right. Speaking about this issue is Islamophobia.
Yeah.
That's it. Knowing too much about this issue means you're Islamophobic.
Yeah.
Jada Franson, the girl in question at the moment, she's facing a charge in Northern Ireland for speaking about this issue. I watched her speech. Have you watched her speech?
No.
No, I watched her speech. She's faced arrest for. And do you know what it is? I faced 9 years of harassment, persecution and arrests for speaking about Islam. And I've seen exactly the same happen to Jada and Paul and that group. So I say, no matter what people agree with politics or groups or not, we're in Britain. We have free speech, we have freedom of assembly, and we should be free to do that. But I understand now the country I thought I lived in when I first started my activism is a very different country to that I now accept we live in. We live in a post-free speech era, completely post-free speech era. It's a facade that we have free speech. And anyone who steps outside the status quo, they will throw the full force of the media and the state, the establishment at them to destroy them. They've gone out of their way not to destroy me, but to destroy every member of my family for my political beliefs and for the opposition I give to the Islamization of my country.
Right. But okay, so look, the Soros guys are listening to this show right now. They do every morning, right? The Media Matters guys, and they aggregate this show and they pull quotes selectively. So let me put this to them right now. You're listening, Media Matters out there right now, and your heads are exploding because we've got Tommy Robinson here in our studio in London, and I know how they're going to write about it, and you know, Breitbart hosts far-right activists to talk about, you know, president tweeting far-right activists, you know, far-right circle jerk is happening right here on Breitbart News Daily. Let's talk about that, and then we'll move on to the Britain First stuff. I don't think, by the way, since I did a long interview with you a couple of years ago, by the way, I take some partial credit for you honing your media skills.
You were one of the first people to sit down.
Right.
You were one of the first people to, I went through a stage where everyone attacked me and no one gave me an opportunity. You were one of the first people to sit me down on camera and give me a fair, decent, let's talk about this.
We did an hour long and it was mainly you speaking. And most this audience is like, oh, Raheem didn't speak. That's weird. I'm a talkative person, but you spoke for nearly an hour straight, told your whole story. We didn't cut it up. We didn't chop it up. We didn't dice it, slice it, you know, do all this sort of stuff. And I'm of the belief, by the way, that if you're giving somebody who's controversial in an interview, you let them talk as long as possible, because they will out themselves as a bigot or something in the, you know, if they are that way.
Of course.
And you did nothing to show that. So Media Matters, make sure you go back and watch that interview as well. It's on YouTube. You can see that as well and figure out what Tommy Robinson is. I don't think you have ever expressed really, as far as I can see, you know, any sort of right-wing tendencies. I think of you, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I think of you as, you know, an issues-based person, not a political spectrum person.
I'll be honest with you, as embarrassing as it is, when I started the English Defence League, I didn't know what left-wing and right-wing were. I didn't understand politics or have any interest. Like most working class people in the UK, I was working on a building site and I didn't care for politics at all. I started opposing what was immediately affecting my family, their life, my town, my future, our country. And that was Islam. I've never ever strayed into any other political debate because I'm not that interested. In fact, most of my views are very liberal. I'm a very liberal.
Well, classical liberal for the American audience.
Classical liberal. Yeah. So I'm not. My problem stems from Islam, and so it's that people have an understanding of where I'm from. I'm from a town called Luton that's 30 miles north of London. Luton was the launch pad for the 7/7 bomb plot. It was the launch pad for the fertiliser bomb plot, the Stockholm bomber. We've had, just last year, we've had about 7 different separate terrorist terror arrest groups in the last 18 months. One of them for planning to behead an American soldier. When I was born in Luton, there was 1 mosque. There's now 30.
Wow.
Oh yeah. I've seen.
How big is Luton?
Luton's a population of 200,000 people.
And there's 30 mosques.
There's 30 mosques.
What's the geographical size of Luton? Do you know?
I don't.
We'll find that out, because that's extraordinary.
And what it is, and they're all in one area. Well, that area's just grown and grown and grown. And when I talk about the makeup of Luton has 30,000 Irish, 30,000 Polish. White English are a minority in Luton. That's my background. White English are a minority in England, in Luton. And I've watched and seen all of the problems, from the gang rapes, from the 2-tier policing system. So the things I talk about, and this is the problem with the groups who oppose us, or the liberals or the left, that they're not talking about life experience. I'm not talking about what I'm reading in my book or reading in the book. I'm talking about, I've seen this happen, I've seen that happen, I've seen the policing system, I've seen the unfair funding system, I've watched it all. I've seen the way that we as white working class community in the town have become completely irrelevant because of the way that the Islamic community organise himself and orchestrate himself for the block vote. And the Labour Party...
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Sadiq Khan is the Muslim mayor of London. Came into power on the crest of media approbation, applause. Isn't it wonderful? London's got its first Muslim mayor. No, by the way, no question about whether he was suited for the job, right? Just he's Muslim, so it's great, right? Now, this man this morning has said that President Trump is not welcome in the United Kingdom. Even that, by the way, he's the mayor of London. He can probably get away with saying at a push he's not welcome in London. He said he's not welcome in the United Kingdom. He says it's a betrayal of the US-UK relationship that he retweeted these videos yesterday. He said it beggars belief that the president of our closest ally doesn't see that his support of this extremist group actively undermines the values of tolerance and diversity that makes Britain so great. If that isn't out of the George Soros handbook, I don't know what is, by the way.
It's funny you say, because I actually been going through the politicians. For example, David Lammy, who's a black politician in London. He's come out saying exactly the same. He's not welcome in his country, in his city. Now, when you go through David Lammy's financial things, he has money coming in from George Soros. Mm-hmm. I feel, as an Englishman, watching what's currently gone on in the last 24 hours, with the comments from politicians and the media, I've seen all of it, I feel completely embarrassed.
Yeah.
I feel completely embarrassed.
Yeah.
I feel completely embarrassed that the American public must be watching this, and I want them to understand that the majority of the British people do not feel the way that it's being pushed and the agenda that's being driven on the media, by politicians, by the press, by everyone. We don't feel that at all. And yeah, I feel completely embarrassed by it. And when we talk about
how do you feel about Theresa May and Downing Street's response to this? They're saying that this was wrong, that the president shouldn't have done this. Theresa May's basically throwing the whole Brexit thing under the bus over virtue signalling, as far as I'm concerned, because we need a UK-US trade deal
Completely.
for Brexit to work.
Yeah, they're risking our future.
And why are they risking our future? For what? What does it get her?
Gets her nothing.
Gets her nothing.
It gets her brownie points and gets her. So Theresa May.
Is that a racial statement? Brownie points?
Oh, yeah. it's
hey, Media Matters. Did you get that one?
It's embarrassing. And when we talk about, when I was on a radio interview this morning with two journalists, and they started talking about these tweets.
Yep.
And I asked them, when was the last terror attack prevented in the UK?
Yeah.
And they both said they don't know.
Yeah.
I said, well, let me tell you when it was. It was prevented 2 days ago.
Wow.
Okay. 2 days ago, after a man in London and a man in Birmingham were arrested, they were arrested in the later preparations of a terrorist attack.
Do we know where they were trying to do?
No, it's a sophisticated. All we know is come out. It's a sophisticated attack.
Wow.
Now, when you hear that, so I say, why is the rest of our country not up in arms about that? That's happening every week. In the last 7 months, we've had 4 terrorist attacks, killing children, stabbing women in their throat in restaurants, lorry attacks. That's in the last 7 months. We've had eight attacks prevented in the last 7 months. Now, rather than being on the high horse or Theresa May talking about this and talking about stopping this, we're talking about tweets which showed videos of evidence. You know, when this come out and we keep hearing that we from the media, they say Jada Franson alleged the man was a Muslim. This is the man who's got the Virgin Mary's trophy. It took me 5 minutes to verify where that video's from.
Wow.
And then it took me another 5 minutes to translate everything the man's saying.
Wow.
Now, the man's saying that I'm doing this for Islam, for Allah, for the takeover, because they're idolaters, because it's Christianity. This was in Syria. So it took 5 minutes, but yet our media still say Jada Franson alleges he's a Muslim. No, he is a Muslim. And yes, they were Muslims and they were throwing people off the rooftop because they were moderates, because of the Muslim Brotherhood. And the reason why that's more relevant is that Barack Obama supported the implementation of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. So this was an uprising in 2013 that Donald Trump has retweeted, where your previous president was part and parcel of the reason those men were being thrown off the rooftop.
And by the way, this is not conspiracy theory, right, ladies and gentlemen?
These are
The
facts.
U.S. State Department under Hillary Clinton and with Barack Obama as president assisted the Muslim Brotherhood, not just there, by the way, not just in Egypt, all over North Africa, Middle East, in the United States of America as well. The Council on American Islamic Relations, Barack Obama literally went to Cairo and quoted from their press releases. This is a Muslim Brotherhood organization. That was your last president. So if you want to ask me the question, would I rather the United, and I realize it's an English voice saying this, ladies and gentlemen, you'll forgive me, would I rather the United States have a president that retweets something that 2 out of 3 are right and 1 is a wrong video.
Is it a wrong video?
The Dutch one, I think, is.
But he's a son of a migrant. What's wrong? Because all I'm hearing at the minute, there's no.
They say it was a Muslim kid attacking a non-Muslim kid. I don't think there's any evidence for that.
There's no evidence for it. Is there any evidence countering that? Is there evidence to say that he's not Muslim?
I believe there is.
Is there?
I believe there is. And we're getting into it on Breitbart London at this point in time, and some other organizations are digging it. But even so, let's take 2/3 right, okay? As my favorite band Fall Out Boy would say, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. You're asking me to pick a president that does that versus a president that emboldens a group that should be globally designated a terrorist organization that wants to overthrow Western civilization. You want me to pick which president I prefer? Guess which one I'm picking.
I think what Donald Trump has done here has shone a massive torch again, which everything he does, I feel, does this, into the hypocrisy and what we're up against. He retweets. So our Prime Minister watches a video of men being thrown off a rooftop, of a Virgin Mary being smashed on the floor, and a young boy being beaten up, and she's talking about the far right.
So tell me about. Let's take a call. All right, let's go to line 1. Dave in Pennsylvania. Dave, good morning.
Good morning, Raheem, and all you guys there. Hey, the thing I don't really like about all this immigration of the Islamic countries is they're not here to assimilate; they're here to dominate. You know, they're not conforming to the laws in the countries they're going into. They're forming their own little groups, like those no-go zones, like you talk about. I've yet to buy your book, though. But
come on, Dave.
Why is the countries letting this happen? They ought to, if they're not conforming to the laws in the country, kick them out. Get them out of there.
It's a great point. It's a great question. I'm going to throw it over to Tommy right now. Tommy, is it too much of a sweeping statement to say they're all not assimilating?
Yes.
Okay, but yes. So let's walk through that. Yes. So some are, some aren't. Which constituent groups are doing a good job? Which aren't doing a good job? Who do we need to be paying attention to? You're going up later on in the day up to the north of England. You're going to a neighborhood which has a lot of non-integration, but it's a specific type. It's not. You know, these aren't Arabs. This is a problem with the Deobandis, the Bangladeshis, the Pakistanis. Yeah, so they do the Wahhabis, Salafist, Deobandi schools of Islam. I talk about it in my book. You talked about it at length. Just talk to us a little bit about what Dave is saying, because these people, by the way, are not just not integrating, they are convincing other non-Wahhabi, Salafist, Deobandi Muslims to follow their suit.
Yeah. What I'd say is that if I bring it back to Luton again, so I've grown up in Luton and I've seen the divide, the complete non-integration and the general hostility towards non-Muslims by the members of the Muslim community. Then we have a town near Luton called Biggleswade. Now, Biggleswade has no mosques, but there's a handful of Muslims. And when I speak to the English kids in Biggleswade, they say, no, there's no problem at all. There's no problem. They're completely integrated with us. That's because there's no mosque. There's no Saudi influence. If you look at the Saudi influence in our country.
Wow.
Yeah. So they're getting on fine there where there's no mosque.
Wow.
Yeah, because they're not being taught to hate. They're not. So what I'd say.
So here's the thing. I interrupt a lot, but you're saying things that are so powerful. You're saying, you're not arguing it's an ethnic thing. You're not arguing it's ingrained in these people. You're saying there are malign influences that we've allowed into our countries that are taking these people out of British and out of American civil society and making them into something different.
Planned and orchestrated. Planned and organised.
Why does the BBC not talk about that?
No, it's completely planned and organised. And I think if we look at the funding and where the money comes from for most of the mosques or the problematic mosques, then we can see it's organised. This is where it goes. This is where it's so crazy. My local council, Labour Council, your Democrats in America, my Labour Council give £140,000 funding to the Wahhabi Luton Islamic Centre. Now, the Luton Islamic Centre, it's called the Luton Islamic Centre, but if you go on the website, if you go on the internet and search their name, it's called the Gular, where the word actually means the Muslims who come into the country to take over. That's what they've called their centre. Now, that was the centre from the Stockholm bomber. This was the centre where Khalid Massoud, the most recent Westminster attacker, he worked there. This is the centre where when I translated, what I done is took 8 pages off their website and I got them translated. 6 pages were justification for lashing women. The other 2 pages were justification for killing homosexuals. This is on their mosque website, okay? Their mosque imam, finally now, he was part of my town's Luton in Harmony program. All these stupid diversity programs that they have to try and pretend that everything's fine. Yeah, they let off a few balloons once a year. The imam gets pictured with the priest, and we all tell everyone we all love each other. Yeah, that's this program. And the Kadir Bas, the leading imam, was part of this. I've battled for 8 years to tell everyone who he is and what the mosque is and where the money's coming from, how radical they are. Only now have they been exposed after an undercover investigation found that he was calling for Muslims to wage weapons ready for war against us. This is how big the problem is.
Can I interject something in here real quick before I hang up?
Dave, real quick, because we've got to go to a break. 30 seconds.
You know, I'm still waiting for pictures to come out of Obama down on his knees on a prayer rug with that little beanie cap on, because I really do believe that he is actually a Muslim.
Well, I don't know about all that, Dave, but I do know that he was certainly prostrate to Islam, if not to Allah. You know, Dave in Pennsylvania, thank you so much for the call here on Breitbart News Daily. Tommy, just before we have to go, talk about your book.
So the book, if you pick up the Quran is encrypted. One thing Muhammad said one day is something he said 10 years later.
So you're saying it's not in chronological order?
It's not in chronological order, as any great war manual wouldn't be.
Right.
Yeah? It's not in chronological order. It's an encrypted book, so it needs decoding. Now, what we realise is that in the early 1900s, the Quran that you would buy in the UK, for example, when Winston Churchill read the Quran or Sir William Gladstone read the Quran was in chronological order. They've all gone now. Yeah?
Oh, wow.
It was in chronological order. So
they were reading a different Quran?
They're reading a different Quran.
Wow.
Yeah, and this is all proven in the book. So previous American prime ministers, but Sir William Gladstone, Sir William Gladstone held the Quran above his head in Parliament, and he said there will never be peace on this earth so long as we have this book.
Wow.
This book is a violent curse book.
Wow.
Now, all of this is put in the book, but what we've done is, because of abrogation, anyone who understands Islam, whatever Muhammad said later in his life supersedes what he said earlier. Now, if the book's all muddled up, then we get this interpretation argument all the time. When you put it in chronological order, you then see that what we've done is we've worked through. So when you get to the peaceful verses, which are now at the back of the Quran, because in Muhammad's first 10 years of his life, he was very peaceful, and that's when the peaceful verses are from. Then he introduced piracy, war, rape, murder, jihad, and that's where all the extreme verses from. Now, when it's put into chronological order, when you get to the peaceful verses, we've literally put a little line through them, and it tells you which one abrogates them. So then it's the first book that you can look through, and you can then understand the context of Islam, because when we've done it back to front, the first page, and it's a full Quran along with the instruction, that when you get to the first page of the Quran, it's basically kill them. The last thing Muhammad said, Surah 9:5, kill the non-Muslims wherever you find them.
Wow. Tommy Robinson, we've got to leave it there. I wish I could talk to you all day, and I'm sure the audience feel very similar about it as well. That's Muhammad's Quran, by the way, that you can pick up on Amazon.
You can pick up on TommyRobinson.com.
TommyRobinson.com.
Or Muhammad's Quran. Yeah, Muhammad's-Quran.
And we will be right back here on Breitbart News Daily, live from London in the United Kingdom after this short break.